element of romper room, Jen.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys.
I appreciate you coming on here on Zoom. It's good for us to do this together. And over break, I had a chance to look at different things that I wanted to teach from as we not left, we never leave, but that we worked a lot on the concept of monotheism and the uniqueness of that to Jewish life and us being Jews, even here today, thousands of years later, and that we learned about it from Abraham. And then I talked about wanting to move into some of the Jewish women that built the nation of Israel, or let me better say that they built the beginnings of, and the things that were going to be, like we call hand ups, you know. Am I letting myself in? I am. Okay. I know. Sorry. So from that, I thought it was appropriate, and I like this book that I want to teach from. I'll tell you what it is. And my plan is to do the introduction as much as I can today. And then I'll give it to you when we're finished. Okay, because Stacy's here and Julie's here. And then you can purchase it yourself. You do not have to. I'm going to go through, and I'm not going to use it word for word because I don't want to, you know, I don't want to do that with an author, although it's a very good book. Sisterhood of the Copper Mirrors, which whatever. There we are, right there. So we can send out in an email as a recap the name of the author, Leah Saul. I do have other books that were referred to me by Rebbetzin Pavlov on the Jewish women that built the tribe of Israel, you know, Am Yisrael, then that left for us lots of different Jewish, they're mitzvot, but they're things that we do that make up our Jewish life. And there are also character traits that are uniquely Jewish or were uniquely Jewish as we started becoming a people. I would hope today that most of us strive towards these different midot, character traits. Anyway, so that's my goal. I'm starting with the introduction because it's so powerful and it touches upon some of the topics we've spoken about here. It's page, I'm just telling Stacy here, it's page whatever. Right after the table of contents. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story from here. Just hold it and listen and let's see what you think. Okay, because I've now brought this up a couple times and it seems to have an effect. But this is how she starts. She calls it our spiritual inheritance, as I've mentioned before, and that it is a rich legacy. So there's a question out there. If a beggar on the street inherits $1 million, but does not know about it, does that make the beggar rich? I'll pause even here. No. Stacy's going with no. Anybody else have an opinion before I go on? Adrian's got one, which is good. No. Okay.
I just muted myself.
A beggar who finds food in the garbage dumpsters and does not know about any inheritance will continue to eat out of the dumpsters. That person's life will not change. The beggar will not sleep, eat, or dress differently. So the answer is no. Potential is not actual. Sounds like a science project from 7th grade. If someone does not know about an inheritance, that person is not rich. If someone knows about an inheritance but does not claim it, that also changes nothing. It happens more often than you may think. A fortune is available, but for whatever reason, the money goes unclaimed. In some cases, it's because the money is associated with pain and the heirs don't want it. But in plenty of cases, the next of kin doesn't even know about that. And I remember just recently, I would say, learning about that. Yeah, it was an annual publication in the paper where they tell you that there are that there are land or inheritances, and they give you like a certain amount of months to claim it, and then it goes to the state of Illinois. You know, something like that happens. So, hi Debbie. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Heather, how are you?
Hi, good. Okay, so and that's what we said. So you are not rich. Maybe in like, you know, potential you may be, but it has not been actualized. It is the same for the spiritual inheritance of every Jew. So for every one of us, that desire to know more about your inheritance is why I'd say we're reading this book together, but why we show up for this class, why we come to Jewish learning as adults. So what we're reading here is an invitation to journey into the discovery of ourselves as Jewish women, of what it means to be part of the Jewish nation, people, the Jewish people, and our relationship with God, the divine. It says here, she uses the divine. You can insert the word that works for you, as reflected in the archetypes of Jewish women. These women's stories are relevant to our lives today. They pulse with life and truth. Jewish rituals serve to bring the spiritual realm into the material world. I just want to pause right there for a second. That is something that I find is challenging a bit. If there's a mitzvah or a midah or a Jewish way of life that we're so used to that we just do, sometimes we have to pull back and say to ourselves, I need to connect to the spirituality of this. I need to try and connect this thing that I do to the upper realm. I need to say that this thing that I'm doing, let's say candlelighting before Shabbat. Let's just use that because that's easy for many of us to attach to. When I do that, it's good if I'm going to learn more about why we do that, why that's a mitzvah, what that brings to us as Jewish women, as people, what brings to our nation, but how it also connects me to God, to the divine, and how it's part of what's left for me at the end of my days at 120 years, because I can't take any of this stuff with me as much as I would like to take the this or that with me. It doesn't work that way. And so therefore, but our actions and the world that we built here, that hopefully follows, well, hopefully it's for good. It could follow us l'ra, for bad, but we're all going to say it's for good. Okay. We're all going to say that the things that we do here are going to follow us for good. Okay. So that's what I wanted to say here. When we talk about spiritual, bringing the spiritual realms into the material world, that's the work that we talk about often, or I talk about often here. Some women have not looked for or been given their inheritance, perhaps because of misconceptions or lack of a Jewish education. Yet, if you are a Jewish woman, this treasure belongs to you no matter what. It's up to us to claim it and to live it and to celebrate it. And that's kind of what we'll do here. We work on. Okay, going to the next page here. This was interesting to me again, we're in the introduction, but the way that this author lays out how we are introduced to the Jewish woman in our past and what they did, what they left for us. There is a system of where we find it and a system of how it's left for us that the teachers and sages and people from much further back have left for us in a categorical way so that we don't forget it. And I think I mentioned that so many times here. I'm looking at Allison, thinking how we've been talking about this for years. I'm sure many of you and I talking about it, but just looking at Allison. Okay, it says here what you can expect. This book explores the stories of some of the most prominent women in the Tanakh, which I'll remind you again what that means. Tanakh is a Hebrew acronym for Jewish scripture. It's made up of the Ta in Tanakh is the Torah, which are the 5 books of Moshe, or the Chumash, which we've discussed. The Nun sound in Tanakh are the Nevi'im, which in English is translated as prophets, a whole word in itself to unpack, not something that I always understood. I have a history of calling Rabbi Carson, just saying, remind me again what this is again, because it's so out of my understanding to receive prophecy. Like, do I receive prophecy? Like if I decided to go with making this dinner versus that dinner and everybody loved it, was that prophecy? I don't know. Right. So there's this concept of Nevi'im, prophecy. It's not a concept. It's an actuality that happened in the Jewish world. That is the Nun. Hold on for just the Nevi'im, and Stacy's got one, and the Ketuvim. And that's from the word katab, means to write in Hebrew. And these are writings, including books. I thought this was interesting. I always thought it was just the 5 Megillot, Esther and the book of Ruth and the book of Ecclesiastes. But it also includes Psalms, which are Tehillim, Proverbs, which in Hebrew is called Mishlei, if you know that word. Ecclesiastes is Koheles, and there's more. And in the Christian tradition, it would be called the Old Testament. Okay, I'm going to stop here for any comments or questions, but there's one right here from Stacy.
What is the prophet? And what's the difference between like a prophet and a sage?
That was a great question. Stacy's asking, how do they pick the prophets? And then what is the difference between a prophet and a sage? And sage is really wisdom, and sage is something different than a prophet. So I used it, maybe possibly I confused it here, because sage is really what we call the chazal, the bright ones, zichron levracha, that we should remember them. And so those are the commentators, the commentary that was on the written and oral Torah. So that would be, I think, where the stages are. But Nevi'im, receiving prophecy, there's a whole tradition of who were prophets, what the prophecy was, and how it's recorded as prophecy. And then there are many people in our Jewish history from a long time ago who had experiences that they wanted to share, but they were not considered prophets and they were not included in Nevi'im. And this is where the Anshe Knesset Hagadolah, they're the ones that helped seal who made it in, who didn't make it in. And I'd have to get back to you more about that then. But it's good to have this vocabulary. It's good to know Tanakh when somebody says it, which I've said here before. Okay. I didn't know that when I was learning that there were many, many Jewish women who were considered Nevi'im. I always thought it was Deborah. That was it. That's what I knew. You too, Allison? Okay. I don't know. Sometimes. So does anybody else have an idea of who else would be a Jewish Nevi'ah, a prophetess? I didn't know. Some of the Jewish women that we're going to cover here are, we will always, maybe you can all recite with me. It's Sarah and Rivka and Rachel and Leah. That's what we say when we light our candles and we beseech upon, Hashem, that he should bring down for our daughters good character traits or a good mazel. And then as I go through these books and I try to understand really who are the women from whom we learn, there are so many more. So we've got Sarah and Rivka and Rachel, Leah, I say this so quickly, and we have Yocheved, Moshe's mother, and Miriam, Moshe's brother, and Tzipporah, wife. Miriam was Yocheved, Moshe's mother. Okay. Tzipporah, Moshe's wife. We have a woman named Rachav, who was part of the nation, the generation that went into Israel after Moshe died, when we first got into Israel and were able to claim it as our land. We have Devorah, Yael, Ruth, Naomi, Hannah, Abigail, Esther, and even a woman who I've learned about and heard about. She's mentioned only briefly. Her name is Sarah. Sarah Asher. That's what I call her, Sarah, daughter of Asher. So I'm just giving you the names of that it's more than we think, and it gives me strength. Oh, what about Chava? Good. I wouldn't call her a prophet, but she is the first woman introduced in this book that I'm using. She was not in some of the others, but Chava is, and there was a great deal to learn from her, but she is before, right. Chava was not part of the Jewish nation that we're part of. She was part of God's creation, and from her comes all of she and her husband, all of mankind or peoplehood. So there's what to learn. There's a lot to learn about our intimacy, about our sexuality, about a relationship with good versus evil, with knowing and not knowing, with getting swayed towards poor examples. In her case, it's a snake, which is not even the kind of snake that we know of today. So we are going to start with Chava because it's so good. It's so good. But I will tell you that from Chava, talking about that, and I remember learning this with Rebitz and Pavlov when I was in seminary, but trying to tackle the story of Breshit, of creation, is so much bigger. She said it was bigger than her. So if it was bigger than this teacher that I always talk about several teachers who is just brilliant, then I'm going to tell you it's much bigger than me. So I will be able to share what this author has to share, and maybe I will cull from other authors, but that story of what happened in the Garden of Eden, and the apple, which was not an apple, and the tree, and the separating of this one creation that was human into one that was male and one that was female. This is all, we'll do it to the extent that I can do it. Okay, I'm going back though. If there are any other questions or comments, are there any? Okay. The way that this author sets up this particular writing and what I like about it is she separates it into 3 parts. There are stories of the different women. There are the gifts that they bring. And then she asks and shares with us ways that we can reflect upon it today, which is what I mentioned earlier, that if these women are mirrors for us, which is this sisterhood of the copper mirror, it's in her title. It's frequently Jewish matriarchs are described as women who are a mirror that are held up to us and you know, into which we can look for ourselves. So then what can we take with us through in this reflection of whichever woman we're learning about as we go along? Okay. She says the stories are the understanding of the foundation of the biblical story. The biblical stories are our foremothers, hard to understand because there's not that much written. And I've talked about that in the past, just that this is not a complete history book. You're not getting an entire, you know, 400-page book on some woman in history. You're getting enough sentences from the Torah to help us understand, or from Nevi'im, to help us understand the main detail, the main pieces of what they did. And then it takes the oral law and it takes all the commentary to fill in the pieces, and which I've talked about, we'll keep talking about. They weren't perfect. They made mistakes just like we do. They are human. And so you could even stumble across some of the stuff that is distasteful or makes you maybe want to not trust it so much. I don't know. I think that it's possible that we want our Jewish, the people that we look up to or that we learn from to be perfect. Because if you're perfect, then I can be perfect. And if you're flawed, that might be that I'm flawed and I don't know if I like you so much. Okay, anyway, it's out there. It's definitely out there. Okay, she leaves us things to consider that I've also mentioned, and I keep saying that only just to trigger your memory. I'm not trying to talk about myself. I'm trying to trigger you and to go, oh yeah, we've discussed that. Hold on. It would only be that it's somebody saying I can't get in. No. As you journey to understand the legacy of the Jewish women, consider the following ideas. Consider this. Why am I doing this? Okay. She says, we've been hijacked. I love this. It's actually in bold. I can't show it to you. It's not working with my back. We've been hijacked. There are certain Hebrew words that when translated bring up strong and sometimes even bitter emotions. Anybody have any of those? You could just even rate, you could have them not want to share. Jen.
Okay, so I was just on vacation and I didn't have a Torah with me and I wanted to read the Parsha. So I picked up Gideon's Bible, you know, the ones they leave in hotel rooms. And it was very interesting to read that Jacob said that the days of his life were evil. Ra is like, Ra doesn't, it could mean evil, but it's not the primary meaning. And the days of his life were certainly not evil. So I would say Ra is a good one.
Okay. Ra is the Hebrew word for it. We translate it as bad, but she's also translating evil. And there might be other words that have that same connotation. Okay.
And it can mean like tough, like the days of his life were tough. He had a tough life. He thought he lost his child.
Oh, well, there's a lot to learn about how Yaakov and the challenges and the sadness that how he persevered through, but it was not, I don't think it was a joyful perseverance. I mean, maybe when he reclaimed his relationship with Yosef, okay, let's hold that. But when I talk about the use of mikvah and what mikvah means in marriage or in conversion, that idea of going from one state to another state is continuously, and even by myself, misunderstood. And it's the words pure and impure. Here, there's another example of a hijacking of a concept that would make you even not want to do it. Now, there are people that do it and don't understand it, use the mikvah in marriage. There are people that do it and don't like it. You could do it and like it, but you could even not do it because of this exact concept that the Hebrew word translated in English does not do it justice, and therefore I'm not interested. Okay, she says here, you might even say that English versions of the concepts described by Hebrew words have been hijacked by other religions. Oh, there's Jen's example, by academics or by political movements. To reclaim these hijacked concepts, you'll find some of the original words that have been integrated into this book. All right, that's just how she lays it out there. Excuse me for a minute. She's going to give an example, which I don't mind. I don't love this example because I think I liked better this example of pure and impure. That's frequently one of the ones that's used when trying to bring this concept to light for people. But here's what this author Leah says. One example of a slam the book shut hijacked term that raises the hackles of lots of people is the words God-fearing. God-fearing. It sounds like it belongs to another religion, by the way, and not ours. It does, doesn't it? Okay. It's a translation of the following two Hebrew words, okay? The term, Yirat Shemayim. I wish I had it like typed up here. Yirat Shemayim, which literally means awe of heaven. But yira also can mean fear. And so some people translate this as fear of heaven, which is the translation of Shemayim. And that's where a lot of people stop. Has anybody heard this and stopped or want to talk about this? I'll keep going. But oh, Julie's asking, fear of heaven is not the same as fear of death. Yeah, I'm sorry, but fear of death just is so bad. That's why I'm just laughing because, but fear of heaven is not the same at all. So I'm glad you're asking that. Okay, so here's her example, which I'll unpack just for a short bit, and we can come back to it as we need. I also know what the word Shemayim, I'll save that for now, but she says literally means awe of heaven, okay, awe. And it brings up how the word that is now used, it was cool when we were growing up, now it's awesome. I mean, it's really amazing people use, but they either say awesome or amazing to describe everything. And some of you who know me well have heard that I now refuse to use either one, unless it's related to Yirat Shemayim, because it has taken the words awe or amazement and reduced them to such a level that I can't use them. That's just an English problem. That's not even an Hebrew to English problem, but awe. Here's a great example of how you can see it. You can be in awe of an ocean. Awe of an ocean comes with the understanding that with all we may know about it, there is still more that is unknown. An ocean also inspires awe because we recognize that it is more formidable than any human and should be approached respectfully. Some of these are like highlighter moments, and appropriately. An ocean is but one small creation in a universe that we can hardly conceive of. So if we can discuss, I can share with you this awe of an ocean, which when I think about it that way, and we go to the ocean, it's true, it's beautiful. You can think about the tsunami that happened in Sri Lanka and think, well, there's a case where it did overtake a whole people, a whole area. We're so grateful. If we think about that the Atlantic Ocean, Southeast Florida, you go for vacation and you go out and walk on the beach and it does not consume you. It stays in its place. But I have no understanding of it. And I have awe of the ocean. And we also put life jackets on our little kids because we're scared of it. That kind of awe the ocean is only one of the things that God created. So think about the kind of awe that you could have of Shemayim, of the divine, if we're just using this example here. Okay. Someone who has Yirat Shemayim, which is fear of heaven, heavenly awe, would likely want to approach the spiritual realm with wonder and respect. That person would strive to do the right thing even if no one is looking and if there is no chance of getting caught. So let me just pause here for a second. Yirat Shemayim does not belong uniquely to Jews, and the Jews that do live it don't always do it. So like I gave you that introduction about the Jewish women, that they will be flawed and will make mistakes, you will find people who have yarmulkes on or don't eat pork, and you will expect them to have Yirat Shemayim, and you don't know what they have and don't have. But we will probably judge it if we see somebody who looks like they would have Yirat Shemayim Littering. My children have mentioned that before. You know, something, whatever. Litter. One of the pieces of having Yirat Shamayim, of having awe and wonder and respect of the divine who created us, and that there's a spiritual realm bigger than my understanding, is that because I see that, I might act differently in private than I would if I didn't have that. Meaning, well, no, that's not. I was going to give an example of like not paying somebody back, or, you know, when you check out or they forget something, and there's like, I mean, this is maybe younger kids. I'm going to say it doesn't happen to anybody here, but I do know in the past it has happened where they miss something and you get out and you're like, yes, I don't know, I got a free packet of hangers
Oh,
from Walmart,
yeah.
a free headband from Target. Right.
Oh, I-
So Yirat Shamayim is taking the headband, and I'm not saying that you wouldn't do it anyway. No, walking right back into the store
oh,
and returning it and saying, you didn't charge me for this. And I have seen this before, but they will look at me because I've done it in front of my children. I've done it without it, because that is not something I want on me. I am not that holy, a different Hebrew word that doesn't get translated well. I'm just letting you know, I don't want that on me. But several times I've had the cash register, again, it's not about me, but they go, wow, you're so honest. Thank you. And I'm thinking, oh, honey, I don't want, and Dasi was standing right there. So here's a way we can look at Yirat Shamayim and think, there is a place in me where I can have awe or respect that is not fearful of the creator and the world that is created that is so much bigger than my understanding, and therefore treat it carefully. Or treat it with a modicum of, I don't understand, but I'm willing to. Okay. So that was her speaking on the how Hebrew words and the concepts that they bring to us, to our Jewish life, can be misunderstood and then misused. Okay. She said since I thought it was beautiful. It's perfectly wonderful to come to something you find challenging. Whatever slam the book shut challenges you find, please consider what a dull journey it would be if the pathway were always smooth and no obstacles dared you to grow. Not always so easy, that one. I do not love challenges. I've said it to several people here. I would have rather taken the smooth path, but it doesn't happen to any of us. And we have been asked by our Jewish tradition, and even without that, maybe just in your therapy, how can you grow from this? What can you see from this? What can you do? That really did happen to the Imahot. They were challenged over and over, and in ways that are bigger than some of us and not some of us, but some of the challenges we can relate to. I don't know, having a challenging marriage, having a partner who's looking the other way, not being able to have children, having famine. These are all things that happened to the women, and they survived and left their strength for us. So we too can look at the obstacles and say, how can I grow from this? And also say, this is my Jewish life alive. It's not just like I always say, like a cute poster on the wall in the social worker's office or whatever. This really is what Judaism leaves for us and tells us. Okay. Anybody have an obstacle they wanted to throw in here? No, I'm gonna keep going. It's like sticking yourself out there and wanting to, and then just keep going. Should just say, and I've said that, this is true, that if you find something that does not speak to you, hold off. Don't judge it. Wait it out, and you can revisit and see if it grows over time. At first glance, these may not always make sense. Some of the things you learn on this journey about the Jewish women, the Imahot, will be logical to you right away. Some things may seem to make no sense at all. Sometimes an understanding of the time during which the stories of the Tanakh took place will help make sense of its teachings. For example, having more than one wife, which we will get to. We don't do today in our religion. In addition to the books of the Tanakh, there are other traditional Jewish texts that help us understand these women, such as the Talmud, which is a combination of the Jewish oral law. She says Jewish oral law, but what was given at Har Sinai to Moshe, and the rabbinic commentaries that explain them. Or the Gemara, if you've heard that term, Gemara. The Midrash, which is something different, and I get them mixed up sometimes. So if you do too, I also do, which is, she writes here, interpretive rabbinical literature. I always hear these stories. But stories that help illuminate, and they're not made up stories. They were also part of the oral law, but they're in this section called Midrash. The commentaries that have been handed down over centuries will help us dive into and understand. All right, I'm looking at my time here. When someone meets you for the first time, it does not make any sense for that person to judge the complexities of you by looking at your hair or your eye color or the outfit you happen to be wearing that day. No one could begin to understand the depths of who you are, your feelings, your yearnings, your dreams, or the strengths at first glance. The women in Tanakh are as complex as we are. So don't expect to understand them at first glance either, the same way you wouldn't expect somebody to understand you. Their stories can't be tied up in a neat bow, but in any case, she says, how disappointing would it be if their stories and teachings were so shallow? So I'll just stop here and bring back again candle lighting, which is frequently attached to, and we learn about from Sarah, who is normally the first person, but like I said, I think we're going to start with Chava. But when we light candles and we say the blessings and then we are in Shabbat, how much do we think about what we just did? I know. I appreciate the shaking of the head because I did it this week. I ended up staying home. Why did I stay home? Hadassah? Well, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I don't know if I was home for COVID. I didn't go to shul. So I thought, well, here's a good opportunity to really read what I'm saying. So I'm going to read it in English. I said it in Hebrew. I'm going to read it in English and try and take it from this realm, my realm of the physical. I did it action physically. I'm going to try and connect the spiritual to what it does to elevate me. Does it connect me closer to Hashem? Am I growing? Do I have more yirat shemaim from it, let's say, or more awe, which is yirat, I said. I did a little bit. I did because I thought to stop and wait and try it, but frequently we're racing through our day. And so this, again, as I frequently says, takes work. Takes work. Doesn't always come. Doesn't mean we don't do it, but there are things to learn from every bit of Jewish mitzvah and Jewish character trait, which in Hebrew is a midah, or part of our Masorah. That's, Julie likes when I say hand-me-ups. They're not hand-me-downs, but they are left for us to mine through and to live with and to grow from. But sometimes we have to take a break. We have to read it in English and see what we're doing. Okay. Saying it more, Julie's, I don't think you can hear her over there, but Julie's just saying that, which is true, that by saying it by rote doesn't have as much meaning. And when you slow down and you really say it meaningfully, it does have more. But what would be even higher level, which we're going to hopefully get to, is to the why. Because I tried to think about, why am I lighting candles again? And I went and I looked it up. I'm like, okay, all right, we're bringing light into the world. It's helping me separate from weekday to Shabbat. We know that God created light. I need light on Shabbat because I'm not going to turn mine on and off. So it'd be, there's so many hints that last thing I'm going to get to as to why we have a reverence for, or like an attachment to the concept of lighting candles. It's actually one of the mitzvot that I hear frequently from women that I encounter. Maybe you can experience yourself, but that's what they do. They'll tell me, I light those candles and then I'm racing off to soccer practice. Okay, great. Great that you're lighting them. Let's learn more about them. The rest, different discussion. She's asking what is more. Oh. She's asking if it's better to say the blessing in Hebrew that you don't understand, or say it in English where you do understand. There's a lot of opinions about that. Does anybody want to say their piece here on that one?
Doesn't matter, does it?
No, doesn't matter.
But you did say once about something that you do have to say in Hebrew. Oh, like some of the daily prayers. Like,
No, okay, so I
I
never
also
said, I
know-
don't think I ever said you have to say it in Hebrew because I think the opposite. So let me just clarify, because especially the prayer after using the bathroom is so long, and if they're not familiar words, like Baruch Atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam is so familiar, we can say that like I don't want to say in our sleep because we're not saying it, you know what I mean. But the Asher Yatzar, the after that would be so hard to say, and it only in Hebrew. And it's commonly known that God knows all languages of the world and understands them. God is multilingual, all lingual, and so it doesn't matter what language you end up coming to God with. It's what you're doing with it. But I will remind you of this, and we'll learn more about it, that that Judaism is not a way of life or a religion or a lifestyle or an inheritance that is purely spiritual. Okay? Judaism does not really, for us anyway, dwell only in the realm of the spiritual or the soul. It's all important, but if we don't do anything with it, then it doesn't come to, like she said, potential is not actual, which is why I've said before that we are really not as much the people of the book as we are the people of the do. It was a huge concept that I had to learn that I've shared here, is that you do the action. It is as if it brings down the spirituality or the holiness or the higher level from heaven. It snaps them together like one of those Lego toys you can't take apart, and they're snapped together for you and they follow you along. So every time you light candles and you bring down whatever, we'll have to learn more about what it is you're bringing into the world by lighting candles. The physical action snaps it together with the spiritual, and they belong to you. And you carry them forward. So every time you make a bracha, yes, you can say it in Hebrew if you're in a hurry and you know it by heart. Or if you are, I don't know, it's somebody's Shabbos table and you don't want to say it, the blessing on the bread in English, I say it in Hebrew like everybody else is. So say it in Hebrew. But I myself have had to pull myself back and say things in English. You know what I have to say in English? Benching. Birkat Hamazon. Do that one, whoosh, right out, off the top of my head. Move on. And sometimes, especially if people are singing and it's hard for me to concentrate on the Hebrew, I can't like do both. Like, what am I saying? I know what I'm saying, and there's really a lot of it is Tehillim, and there's really only one pasuk from the Torah that commands us to say, I ate, I satisfied, and now I'm grateful. It says that. So that's why we do what we do. All of the other pieces that the wise sages of yore have added on are for our benefit. But should I say it in English or Hebrew? So well, save that. Maybe I'll say that, and then I could show it to you. I ate, I'm satisfied, and I'm grateful. Okay. And if we think about people that have had problems with starvation or famines, we could imagine that might be a really useful one for them. It's not our problem at all today. We have other problems, but thank God it's true. Okay. I'm going to just leave this last piece for you because I thought this was brilliant. I learned it before in the past, and it's a way to understand. There are 4 levels of understanding what we're learning. And it's codified, it says here in the 11th century. And I thought it was kind of cool when I learned it. And this is the way that this author and many authors will allow you to attach to these people we're learning about. Okay. Tanakh can be understood on many levels. There is a 4-level system to help us explore and understand the depth of our teachings. It was developed, in the 13th century, excuse me. The Hebrew acronym for it comes from the word pardes. So P-A-R-D-E-S in English. That means an orchard. But it is an acronym for the P. The P means pshat, which I'll explain to you. The resh, the R sound, par, is a remez, it's a hint. The dalid, the D sound, pardes, is drush, and the end of this word that we use, this acronym pardes, is the word sod, the samich at the end. Okay. Again, if I could type it into the chat, but Peshat is the simplest level of understanding of the scripture or of the Torah or of the Tanakh. It gives us the story at face value, It's the basic understanding of who, what, when. A lot of times it tells us exactly what a word means. And if you've learned a bit, if you know who Rashi is, Rashi's commentary on the Torah, Rashi is always pshat. That's just something we just say. Oh, that's the pshat. Rashi's the pshat. That was his job. That was what he wanted to do. And that is what he left for us. There were other commentators that decided they're going to go deeper. That's the remez, the resh in the word par days, or the R sound. Remez is the next level. It shows us hints to deeper understandings of the text. So when we learn about Sarah and we learn that she had to ask her stepson to leave the house because he was a poor influence on her son, that might be hard to hear and read about it in the pshat level, especially if you are a step parent. But even if you're not, it's like, ugh. And you could read about how her stepson, whose name was Yishmael, was not a great influence, but like, really? You had to kick him out? He had to go live in the desert with his mother? That sounds horrible. Pshat. Come to Remez, and we're already going to get a little bit of understanding as to why this happened. The third level is drush. Sometimes people talk about how the spiritual leader of the community gave the drasha on Shabbos, which is really the speech, the talking on Shabbos. But that's a deeper level. And the last level is sod, the samech in Pardes. This is the one that, by the way, is the Kabbalah. Everybody loves talking about the Kabbalah, even Madonna. Or who else is it? Ashton Kutcher or something like this. There's a couple of people that go to the Kabbalah Center in Los Angeles, and I always hear about them, and I understand Kabbalah. Level, which is known as a secret. Sod is actually a secret. That's the realm of the Kabbalah, their esoterical, mystical teachings, which are wonderful to hear. And sometimes they sound like wacky. And you don't have to understand all of them in order to accept that there is this 4-level system that's put into place to aid us in understanding really what happened. I'm going to stop here with this part. I want to just jump back to a little bit of prayer before we go. Oh, I do have a question. There's a question. Oh, Adrian has a question. But yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
Could you repeat, Rush? You were frozen and we didn't get any of it. You're frozen
drush
again.
is the word.
Drush.
Okay. Am I unfrozen now? Yeah. Okay.
No, you're
Drush.
better.
Okay. Drush is from the word midrash, which is we learned about it, or we talked about it earlier, the inspirational or moral teachings that are drawn from interpretive rabbinical literature. That's the midrash. So it's an even deeper level.
Thank you.
Like when we learn that Sarah was a prophetess, even though we just look at her as the first aim, she was married to Abraham and she was part of the connection, the partnership with her husband to bring this new beautiful way of life that would benefit mankind into the world. She was also a neviah, a prophetess. And that knowing that her stepson and her husband's other, his concubine Hagar, all the pieces around that are so deep and so hard to understand. But the more that you go deeper into it, you're like, oh, I see what she saw. She saw how dangerous this would be for Yitzchak. She saw into the future. She knew that her people were going to have forever. I mean, look, when you read, and I actually do have a sheet that I was collecting all of the different sentences from Lech Lecha that keep showing us where Abraham has proof that not only will we have this land of Canaan for ourselves, and that we're going to purchase it so that it really is solidifies as ours, and that it will always be ours. And then God goes even further to say that you'll always be forever, and you'll never be gone, and you'll be able. I mean, I could keep going, right? Be counted as the grains of the sand or the stars in the heaven. She knew that too, and so by looking at what was in front of her, she did have to have her. She didn't have him killed, her stepson. And and Hagar and his son Yishmael and her son, survived just fine in the desert. But at the shot level, it's not so easy to stomach for some people. And as you get deeper, you go, oh, well, I guess she was doing the mama bear thing, right? She was protecting her child. She was protecting what she knew would be the legacy. I have a question here.
So did God give her that
Yes.
special?
Stacy asked if God gave her that special
see the
awareness.
future or something?
How about seeing the future in the way that we look, and it's sometimes I say these concepts and what we really have in front of us is just a Hollywood
Right.
version of it. We do. But knowing when God says you are going to be a people forever, you will never be destroyed. The land of Canaan, which becomes Israel, will always be yours. And that this is a good thing I'm going to give you. This is good. Could she see that? Yes. Could she see that this, I'm jumping ahead, but could she see Yishmael was not, this was not his way? That the people that come from Yishmael are not interested in this kind of lifestyle? Yes, she could. And that it's bad for her son, who is the next inheritor? Yeah, she knew all that. Okay, I'm going to pause here. If I had a pen, I remember the process of discovery. There's more to learn here, and then we'll move on, okay? Last time we met, which was, excuse me, three Wednesdays ago, I gave you, maybe mistakenly, a whole list of blessings that are said in the morning. And I think there were some that went, whoa, what is all of this? So it's part of what we say in morning blessings. I just want to jump back to the mitzvah to pray and to connect with God through prayer, which is one of the spiritual hand-me-ups that we have. And the two that I'm going to mention are, maybe I'll have Julia, one of us will share this with you. This is from Ruchi's book. The first one was Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, who gifted the heart with wisdom to distinguish between day and between night. And this is in the handout that you have from the 17th. If you still have it, and if not, you can email, we can send it to you, but it's also in your handy dandy prayer book right in the morning. And that's the first thing we say when we talk about morning blessings. And we roll through, I think there's 15 of them. And they're, like I mentioned before, they're really modeled after how we walk. Like when we wake up and we get through the first half hour of our day, how we walk through the morning to like wake up, and become aware of what's happening. This is the first one. We thank God gifting us with wisdom to distinguish between day and between night. And the other one that I wanted to mention is that I think it's the fourth one. Who gives sight to the blind, pokeach ivrim, opening the eyes. So I like what this author says here, and we can all come up with some of our own. And there are, when we talk about commentaries, over the generations, over the centuries, so many have mentioned what they think this means for their time, which again brings up that concept of Bayimim Hahem Bisman Hazeh, what was done for them and what they encoded in this time, how we use it in our time. But you could say for, well, it's Bein Yom Uvein Laila, to Bein Yom, between the day, Uvein Laila, between the night. You could say, thank you for giving my body and my mind the wisdom to know the difference between day and night, between good and bad, between right and wrong. I'm kind of giggling as I read this, thinking if anybody has sleep problems or challenges with sleep as we get older, that would be right here for day and night. Like it's the worst when you're up in the middle of the night, acting as if it's daytime and you can't sleep. Like for us, I want the nighttime to be sleep time, and I want the daytime to be wake time. And if you're sleeping all day, so that's not so helpful either. God willing, none of us should have that happen to us. But and then giving sight to the blind. It's funny, she writes here, thank you for allowing my eyes to open and function, even if I need glasses and contacts. They help me appreciate that there's a beautiful world around me, right? But also it is it's a metaphor spiritually also, opening the eyes of the blind. That I didn't know something and now I do. At that time I didn't know it and now I do. So we thank Hashem for that. I like that it doesn't give more details, because it allows you, the reader, or the davener, or you, the person of Am Yisrael, to put in there what you think that means for you that day. It's not only boxed in to like, I can see, God created a body that has eyes, and eyes enjoy the things around us. No, it's more than that. So, all right. I'm gonna leave it there for today. We will continue next week on Zoom with no problems. Nobody has to come to the center if they're not comfortable. I will be here. And if you're comfortable, you can come. It doesn't bother. I do not have a hard time teaching on Zoom. It doesn't faze me at all. Been doing it for the last 2 years. Like, so I'm glad you're here. Does anybody have any comments or things they want to share about this? You could unmute now. I'm looking off, so I'm looking over it, not distractedly, but Julie's over there.
I have a little something. There's a documentary. It's called Searching for Sugar Man. This sort of goes back to the beginning of what you were talking about. And there was this man a musician who back around the time, like the 60s, I think, or early 70s, he was supposedly going to be like the next Bob Dylan. And he made a couple of albums and they kind of went nowhere and his record label dropped him. But somebody in South Africa discovered him and he became huge in South Africa. So he didn't know it.
Oh.
And so for like 30 years or something like that, he went on with his life as like a janitor and a maintenance person. And he raised 3 children and lived part of the time, I think he was like homeless. Like he really struggled with his life, not knowing that in South Africa, he was like a superstar. And then someone started searching for him, like a journalist like there were all these rumors that he had died or like people didn't know what happened to him. And then they found him. I'm kind of giving this all away because it's really worth seeing though anyway, but they discovered him and they brought him to South Africa and he performed to like these huge stadiums, sold out shows. And in the end, they said to him, like, he wouldn't keep any of the money. Some of it went to his kids. Some of it, he didn't really want it. And he said like, he was so happy with his life. Like he didn't really feel bad that he had missed out on this whole opportunity to be this huge pop star or this huge rock star, that he really appreciated and valued his life. And apparently in his own community, he was somebody who was like always helping others and just was this a wonderful, like amazing person. So I just thought that was kind of interesting how that, like you were saying, are you rich if you don't know that you're rich? But he didn't know that he was rich, but he still was rich, I guess you could say, in some way.
Okay, so I mean, I'm curious as to where, because you always give me good suggestions of what to watch, but where you could find that. The only piece that I would say would be a shift, because that's almost the same as the story that we opened with. Many of us who are here in this room are already looking. And so I think that we are not considered, you know, whatever, without spiritual inheritance, because we're already in the throes of finding it, of listening to it, of putting it in place. And we know many people who are not. So the only piece that I would say is that if you're not looking for your an active Jewish, a lively Jewish, you know, inner world, external world, I can't say that you're poor. I'm not going to say that because I don't know. She even said it, but I don't know if you're poor. You may be giving, you may be a very big giver, but the shift here is that once you start upon the journey of finding what the spiritual inheritance is about Judaism, you are so much richer. Sometimes you're annoyed. She shares that and we've shared it and I've talked about it. Sometimes you're like, I don't get this. But I think that once I mean, maybe you guys would have to tell me, but once you start opening up the doors and you have the aha moments, you have the, what? I didn't know that. Then you're happy to be getting it and to be filling your life up. So that would be the only difference. Is it sounds like this musician would have been okay without it, or was okay without it.
So I think he was okay without it, but I think the thing that was possibly missing was that